Well, good morning and welcome to Bowtie Life. I'm Bowtie David. We talk mostly about life in the garden. And in this series, we're talking about small space gardening. In other words, maybe just a part of a tabletop on a patio or a porch or something. And we are in particular on an east-facing porch, and we're working on growing a tomato. So, it's been 45 days since the last episode. You want to see? Hi, I'm Bowtie Dave. Well, first for the bad news. You may remember we had two little seedlings in that solo cup. This is the solo cup. We had a windstorm and I had this sitting up here on this ledge and it blew away. The whole cup I found on the other side of the driveway over there, and the plant, it died. By the time I discovered it, we had some really windy days there for a few days about a month ago, and so the backup seedling didn't make it. But I'm sure you're kind of interested to see what 45 days can do to that little seedling we just saw in the last episode. 45 days, today, in fact. In fact, right about now, in fact. It's been 45 days. So the only thing I have done to this plant is just water it on a semi-regular basis. I walk by here, and when I remember, I will put some water in it and keep it growing. So, and nothing else. I didn't feed it any more fertilizer. Remember, we put all the fertilizer in the soil before we put it in this grow bag. Remember that? So this plant has been no trouble except for the occasional watering. Now, I say occasional watering, let me be specific. Generally, every 2 to 3 days, I pour about a quart to a half a gallon of water into the pot. I would pick it up, and you can kind of tell when it's dry, it will be lighter. And so when you would do that, and the other thing is you can stick your finger, and we're going to talk about how to tell if the soil's wet here in just a minute, but I want to do the big reveal here because we're going to do a couple of things to this plant right now. It's the first time I have done anything to this plant, so I'm kind of excited about where it's gone in 45 days. Here we go. Yeah, remember the little tiny tomato plant that was like this tall? In fact, I think it was maybe this tall. I did add some new string because it's getting a little taller. And look up there. We've got a surprise here. Let me get you closer to that. So down to about the point where this plant was when we last left it, you'll notice some of these lower leaves are dying, and that's normal. That doesn't mean it's ill or anything. Well, I mean, it may have blight or something like that, and it typically will lose these leaves on the lower parts of the stem, but notice every once in a while, there's a new branch growing out. And we're going to take care of this and encourage that branch to grow out because it can produce more energy. Remember, these leaves are producing energy for the creation of this right here. And this is the magic moment right here. This is a tomato getting ready to grow. And this is very important. Let me show you why. Now, so far in this series, I've been very careful to only focus on one plant. And that's because I want to make this a much simpler series where we can just kind of get the information from a single plant and not be confused by tons and tons and tons of information. Now, what I want to show you here, though, is about that flower. There are different kinds of plants out there. This is a cucumber plant right here, and you see the flower right here. In fact, there's a bee over there on the other side. But notice this flower has a plain stem. In fact, there's a bee right over there in that flower that's flying around carrying pollen from one flower to the next. Now, this is a male flower because look at the stem. You see how it's a plain stem under here? If I come down here just about 14 inches, look at this flower. This is a female flower. This is a monoecious plant, and a monoecious plant means the same plant has male and female flowers. Now, why is that any bit interesting to us with a tomato? So these tomato flowers are different than that. This plant has a flower. They call it a perfect bud, a perfect flower, because inside this flower are both male and female attributes, which means it doesn't even need a bee to fly into it to pollinate it. On the monoecious plant that we just looked at, the cucumber, a bee has to carry the pollen from the male flower to the female flower. But this here is a perfect flower because it has everything in this one flower. And you'll notice there's another one here, there's another one over here coming out, and there's actually another one right here that's starting to come out. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 flowers in various stages here that are getting ready to come out. So because this is self-fertile, first off, you could just come in here and jiggle it a little bit, and that will fertilize that flower to grow a tomato. In fact, this is a pretty well developed, you can actually see there's a little bit of a round developing on the back of this tomato, and that right there is possibly the tomato developing, just starting, because I am pretty sure this flower is already developed. Now, I just shook it. Okay, some people say you got to take a toothbrush and touch it to it, the vibrating toothbrush, and touch it to it to get this thing to vibrate. You know what? The wind is blowing. You see those leaves moving? This thing is already shaking. It shakes naturally. God made this thing to where it's going to pollinate itself, which is part of what makes the tomato a very useful plant for a garden, especially a beginning garden. It's one of the reasons why I picked this, because it's just such a simple thing to grow. And you'll notice there's a fork here, and there's a branch on this side, there's a branch on this side. I thought I saw another thing of flowers. I do not. Okay, this is our stem of flowers. You'll notice here's a leaf, and inside here there's another branch getting ready to grow out in there. Let's come down here. You'll notice this one here. Now this broke off all on its own. The wind kind of rattled it around, wore it out, and eventually broke off. But you see this little stem right here? This is coming out of what we call the crotch of the stem. And because this thing broke off, it sent hormones back here to inform this guy, okay, you need to start growing and take over here and start producing energy for the plant. So we have a perfect flower, quote unquote, okay. We have new things popping out, new solar panels, which means more energy. With this flower here, we need to start getting this more energy. So we can actually help this along with a very easy, simple thing we can do. So, like I said, I'm trying to keep this very simple so that anyone can do this, because really anyone can do this. But I'm going to introduce you to a new tool for our small space garden here. Are you ready for this? It's a very fancy tool. No, it's not. It's just a standard pair of scissors, okay? You can use a standard pair of scissors on what we're about to do here. If you want to get a trimmer for this, you can. I'm trying to keep this simple. With stuff you have laying around, I want to give the opportunity to try this as cheaply as possible, just to try it out and see if you can do, and see it, not if you can, because you can, but see if you enjoy doing it. So the only thing I'm going to say about just using your scissors in the house, sometimes these things can have stuff on them, bacteria, maybe a disease from something else you've been cutting that might affect this plant. The only thing you really need to do is a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, and if you pour it on that blade and sterilize it like that, it doesn't take just a few drops, that scissors is ready to go. It's as clean as it can get, and it's sterile, and you're not going to have any problems with it at all. Knock off the extra alcohol. It's alcohol, so it's going to evaporate by the time we use it over here. But raise your hand if you have scissors in your house. Most of us do, okay? If you don't have scissors, you probably know someone you can borrow them from. So looking here at the stem of this tomato plant, we're a few leaves up from the bottom. We're going to look at this. We're going to take, for example, this leaf right here. It's been beaten up. It had a rough time, I know, in the wind and all that other stuff. The leaves are kind of brown. You'll notice they're not really contributing to the energy of the plant. But what I want to bring you to your attention is, looky here, right in the crotch here, there's this one little leaf. You see that leaf right there? It is ready and waiting for the signal for it to start growing. And it will take off at any time we need it to. And right now, we as the farmer, you and me, are going to say, okay, little leaf right there, we want you to start growing. So all we have to do is right here, just a little bit down, we simply cut that off. Now what happens is that leaf will get the signal and it will start growing. Now the very cool thing about that is, look up here just a little bit, you'll notice this branch right here, which has got a lot of brown looking leaves on it. You see that right there? It's not offering a whole lot. So we can cut that off and look at this thing right here. This thing's even more ready to take off. But what that's going to do is that is going to start to grow, and it's going to start to develop more energy for that tomato up top. It's going to start producing something that the plant can actually use. If we come down here, I didn't see this earlier. If we come down here just a little bit, you'll notice there's another branch here. You see the little leaf? Now that leaf looks like it's struggling a little. It's rubbed against this is what it's done, this branch. I'm going to cut that off. Maybe this leaf can take off. And down here a little lower, these branches are not doing much for the plant either. There's nothing showing right there, but there will be. Trust me, there will be. So we can take off these branches, and this is called trimming the lower branches of your tomato, pruning them off so that more stronger growth can take over. And so as we're going along here, we look for these plants, and you know, I like to do it with scissors. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes I don't have my scissors in hand, and as I'm walking out, I'll just take a sharp fingernail and I'll pinch it off. That does run the risk of tearing the fibers down the stem. You really don't want to damage the main stem. So the scissors become very useful when it comes down to that. So now what's going to happen the next time we look at that, these leaves are going to start to develop, and they're going to start to become something a lot more than they are now. So just for the sake of this video, I'm going to tie this orange ribbon up here, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 branches. The 7th one is actually below this ribbon over here, but that's going to be a marker because next time we come out here to video, we're going to be able to see what grows in that section. So there we go. This episode of Small Space Gardening, growing a tomato plant on an east-facing patio, porch, deck, veranda, whatever you have, is recorded. And you can see here we have the 2 ribbons. We have our flowers right here. We are ready to watch this and see what grows. And I'm hoping, I'm very excited because I think the next time, I'm hoping the next time that we see this, that it actually has a tomato growing on it. So there you go. It's really simple. The only thing I've done to this for 45 days is put a little bit of water on it every 2 to 4 days. That is it. And you can I was going to tell you real quick about seeing if the soil was wet. So let's talk about that real quick. The first and easiest thing that you can do, number one, you can pick it up. If it feels heavy, it's probably wet, okay? The next thing that you can do is you can stick your finger down about a knuckle or two, about that far. There's 1 knuckle, 2 knuckle. You can stick your fingers down there about a knuckle or two, not right at the base of the plant. You can actually do it kind of out here. You see, I'm about, 4 inches away from it, but I can feel for sure there's moisture down there, and it is good. Now those roots are a lot deeper than that. Those roots are going pretty far down this bag. In fact, probably as much as down to here now, and looking for more and more water, which is the good thing. That's what you want it to do. So you want to make sure, technical difficulty here. We want to make sure that that soil stays somewhat moist, and make sure that it stays healthy. We talked about seeing the leaves. Now you can see these leaves are curled back a little bit. One of the reasons why it does this, it could be a disease. Another reason why it curls back like that is because it's got too much water, and it's opening up those little stomata in there. There's little holes along in the leaf surface, and it's opening those up to let out more water. So you've got to be careful about overwatering it. That's an important thing. I'm watering it every 2 to 4 days. I probably should go down to every 4 days, not worry about the intermediate watering. So yeah, that's about it. Anyway, If you're enjoying this series, please click the thumbs up, subscribe. Don't miss anything else in this series. Those of you who have already subscribed, thank you so much. You are my heroes. We are growing this our small community here, and you have been a big part of that right now. So we are well over 500. We're heading for 1,000. Some of you may know what that means, but I'm very excited about that. Hopefully, I'm hoping that we get a tomato off this thing. I tell you, it's coming down to November 10th right now. It is Marine Corps birthday today, and we don't have any cool weather in the forecast at all. So here in Destin, Florida, sometimes we've gone through whole winters without a frost, without a freeze. So I'm gambling. I told you way back at the beginning, I'm kind of gambling starting it this late, but I felt pretty good. At this point, it really is a gamble. It won't take long for this thing to start showing a tomato, though. It won't take long at all. So as soon as it starts showing, I'll probably at least do a short as episode number 9 and see where this thing goes. But so far, it hadn't been a difficult process. It's very simple. Very few tools, nothing fancy. About the most complicated thing we talked about was fertilizer. And once you get a general idea on fertilizer, it really doesn't matter. You know, we talked about those numbers. As long as those numbers are kind of close together, not very far off, you do fine. You do fine. And so, anyway, please subscribe so you don't miss any other episodes or any of the other programming that we put out. We have, in fact, we have garden tours coming up. It's, I think tomorrow I start recording them, and I'm very excited because we're in the middle of November and we are still getting production out of the garden, which is very exciting. Yeah. So, yeah, subscribe. Those of you who subscribe, thank you. If you think this was informational, educational, inspirational, or just entertaining, click that thumbs up and share this video on your social media with friends you might think might want to learn how to grow a tomato plant on a small patio. Again, we're just here on a table, corner of a table, that's it. And right now the grow bag is sitting inside an old rusty roasting pan. It is not very complex, folks. It really isn't. And the grow bag is not, I mean, as I've said, none of this has to be done a certain way. You could use a pot. You can use any of dozens of different ways. So don't feel like you're limited on what you're doing. When I started out about 4.5 years ago now, I was working in 5-gallon buckets with holes drilled in them. Some of those I found on the side of the road. So you just don't know. There's really no limit on who can do this. But anyway, there you go. It's a beautiful plant. It's growing still. I'm excited. Y'all have a blessed day.